kids, where are you? It's time for all the art to tell stories.
In a quiet valley, a mother goat and her 7 kids lived in a cozy cottage. The kids played among wildflowers, and their mother warned them about the cunning wolf in the forest, advising them never to open the door to strangers. One day, the mother goat went to the market, instructing her kids to lock the door and recognize her voice and hooves. A wolf, watching from the shadows, saw his chance to trick the kids and feast on them. The wolf imitated the mother goat's voice, but Bruno, the eldest kid, wasn't fooled. The wolf tried again, disguising himself with flour, but Bella noticed his claws. Frustrated, the wolf devised another plan. The wolf had his claws coated with flour and practiced his voice. When he knocked again, little Toby, eager to see his mother, opened the door. The wolf's disguise fell away, and he leaped into the cottage. The kids scattered in fear, hiding in various places. The wolf found and devoured all but Toby, who hid in the clock. Satisfied, the wolf left to sleep in a meadow, unaware of Toby's escape. The mother goat returned to find the cottage in disarray. Toby told her what happened, and she vowed to rescue her children. They followed the wolf's trail to the meadow where he slept. The mother goat cut open the wolf's stomach, freeing her kids unharmed. She filled his belly with stones and sewed it shut. They hid and watched as the wolf awoke, feeling the weight of the stones. The wolf staggered to a stream, hoping to ease his discomfort, but the stones pulled him in, and he sank. The kids cheered, relieved and grateful for their mother's bravery and wisdom. The kids learned to heed their mother's advice, valuing caution and family bonds. The cottage returned to peace, and the story of the wolf became a cautionary tale, strengthening their unity. Once upon a time, in a small village nestled deep within the forest, there lived a young boy named Karl. Karl was unlike the other boys in the village. While others trembled at ghost stories told by the fire, Karl would merely laugh. When the villagers whispered about the haunted mill at the edge of the woods, Karl would offer to visit it alone, much to the horror of his friends. His lack of fear baffled everyone, including his father, a grizzled woodcutter named Gregor. "How can you not feel fear?" Gregor often asked his son. "The world is full of dangers, and fear is what keeps us safe." Karl would shrug. "I don't understand it, father. People scream and shiver, but I feel nothing. I wish someone would teach me what fear is." The villagers began to see Karl's odd nature as a curse. They whispered behind his back, calling him heartless or bewitched. Even Karl's own brothers refused to play with him. "How can you trust someone who doesn't fear?" they would say. One evening, after another day of enduring the villagers' suspicions, Karl decided he had had enough. He turned to his father. "I will leave the village," he declared. "I will travel far and wide until I learn what it means to fear." Gregor sighed, knowing he could not stop his son's determination. "Very well," he said. "Take this pouch of coins and my old staff. The world is dangerous, Karl. Be careful, even if you cannot feel fear." Karl's journey began as any journey might, with long walks through unfamiliar paths and nights spent under starlit skies. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Karl found himself at the gates of an old inn. The innkeeper, a wrinkled man with a wary expression, welcomed Karl but warned him, "Young man, few travelers stay here. They say the inn is haunted, and those who spend the night never see the morning." Karl's face lit up. "Haunted, you say? Perhaps this is my chance to learn what fear is." The innkeeper shook his head. "You're either brave or foolish, boy. But if you insist, I'll give you a room." That night, as Karl settled into his room, strange noises began to echo through the inn. Creaking floors, faint whispers, and the distant sound of chains rattling filled the air. Instead of hiding under the covers, Karl sat upright, curious. When the clock struck midnight, the door to his room swung open. A pale figure with hollow eyes and tattered robes floated in. It moaned, reaching out its skeletal hand toward Karl. "Are you here to frighten me?" Karl asked, tilting his head. "Because if so, it's not working. You look more in need of a warm meal than I do." The ghost blinked, taken aback. It had never encountered such a reaction before. With a shrug, the ghost vanished, muttering to itself about ungrateful mortals. By morning, the innkeeper was astonished to find Karl alive and well. "You're the first guest to survive the night," he exclaimed. Karl frowned. The ghost was interesting, but it didn't scare me. I suppose I'll have to keep searching. Word of Karl's peculiar nature began to spread. Travelers carried tales of the boy who sought to learn fear but remained unshaken. Eventually, the story reached the ears of a nearby king. This king had a problem. His castle's courtyard was cursed. Each night, shadowy creatures would emerge, wreaking havoc and terrifying the guards. The king, desperate for a solution, summoned Karl to his court. "If you can rid my castle of these monsters," the king declared, "I will reward you with gold, land, and my daughter's hand in marriage. But beware, no one who has faced them has survived." Karl's eyes sparkled. "Perhaps these monsters will teach me what fear is." That night, Karl stood alone in the courtyard, armed only with a lantern and his father's staff. As the moon reached its zenith, the air grew cold and the shadows began to shift. Out of the darkness emerged grotesque figures, serpentine beasts with glowing eyes, clawed hands, and ghastly snarls. They surrounded Karl, their voices echoing like a sinister chorus. But Karl, instead of cowering, stepped closer to the creatures. "Are you the ones who are supposed to scare me?" he asked. "You look like you've been through worse than I have. Do you need help?" The monsters froze, their ferocity replaced by confusion. One of them, a large shadow with piercing red eyes, spoke. You are not afraid." "No," Karl replied. "But if you're upset, perhaps I can help you." The monsters, touched by Karl's earnestness, revealed their plight. They were cursed spirits, bound to the castle by an old sorcerer's spell. With Karl's determination and the help of the castle's ancient tomes, he found a way to break the curse. When dawn broke, the courtyard was peaceful once more. The king was overjoyed, but Karl declined the rewards. "I still haven't learned what fear is," he said. Karl's journey took him through enchanted forests, deep caves and forgotten ruins. He encountered witches, trolls, and even a dragon, but none could teach him the meaning of fear. One day, an old woman approached him on the road. "You seek fear, young one?" she asked, her eyes gleaming with mischief. "Yes," Karl replied. "Then visit the Valley of Shadows," she said. "There, you will face the greatest terror of all." Curious, Karl followed her directions and found himself in a desolate valley where the air was thick with an eerie silence. As night fell, a towering figure emerged, a creature of pure darkness with glowing eyes that seemed to pierce Karl's very soul. The creature spoke in a voice that shook the ground. "Why do you seek fear, mortal?" "Because I've never felt it," Karl replied. The creature laughed, a sound that echoed like thunder. "Then let me show you." Suddenly, Karl's mind was flooded with visions. His father grieving over his absence, the villagers suffering from his reckless choices, and his own loneliness. For the first time, Karl felt his heart race, his palms sweat, and his legs tremble. "Is this fear?" he whispered. The creature nodded. "Fear is not just the unknown. It is the weight of love, responsibility, and loss. It is what makes us human." Karl returned to his village, a changed man. He no longer laughed at ghost stories or dismissed the concerns of others. Instead, he used his newfound understanding to help his neighbors face their own fears. Though he had finally learned what fear was, Karl remained courageous, knowing that bravery wasn't the absence of fear but the strength to face it. And so, Karl lived a full and meaningful life, teaching others that fear, though powerful, could be conquered with understanding and compassion. In a grand and ancient castle, a wise king lay on his deathbed. His trusted servant, Johannes, knelt beside him. The king requested Johannes to protect his inexperienced son, the new king. Johannes swore to guide him. The king passed away, marking the end of an era. The young prince, now king, was eager but inexperienced. Johannes became his closest advisor, teaching him governance and compassion. Their bond grew strong. However, the young king longed to explore the world beyond the castle walls. While exploring the castle, the young king found a locked door. Johannes revealed it held treasures and a portrait of a beautiful princess. A prophecy warned of misfortune if pursued. The king, captivated, decided to meet her, believing she was his destiny. Johannes agreed to help the king meet the princess, despite the prophecy. They journeyed to the Golden Palace, where the king expressed his admiration. The princess agreed to marry him, and they returned to the king's homeland, celebrated by the kingdom. On the ship back, Johannes overheard 3 crows discussing a prophecy of misfortune. They warned of dangers, a horse, a poisoned garment, and the queen fainting. Johannes knew he must act, though it would seem treacherous to the king. Upon arrival, a horse reared violently. Johannes killed it, angering the king. He then burned a poisoned wedding garment, further enraging the king. During a feast, the queen fainted. Johannes saved her, but the king accused him of betrayal. Johannes was sentenced to death. He revealed the prophecy and his sacrifices to the king, who realized Johannes' loyalty. The king embraced him, acknowledging Johannes as a true friend and servant. Though the dangers passed, Johannes fell ill. The king and queen cared for him, but he weakened. Before dying, Johannes reminded the king to serve with wisdom and love, fulfilling his promise to the king's father. The king and queen ruled wisely, honoring Johannes with a monument. His story became a legend, symbolizing trust, sacrifice, and friendship. Once upon a time, in a quaint village surrounded by rolling green hills, lived a simple farmer named Klaus. Klaus was known for his hard-working nature, but he had a peculiar problem. No matter how much he toiled, he always seemed to end up on the losing side of every trade. His neighbors often teased him, saying, "Klaus, you could trade a cow for a chicken and still end up owing something." Despite their jests, Klaus was determined to improve his fortunes. One crisp morning, as the sun began to rise, Klaus loaded his cart with the fattest cow from his barn. "Today," he said to himself, "I'll make a trade so good that everyone in the village will call me Klaus the Clever." Klaus made his way to the bustling market in the neighboring town. The streets were alive with vendors shouting about their wares: ripe apples, glistening silks, and pots that promised to never burn food. Amid the chaos, Klaus spotted a butcher with a gleaming smile. "Ah, a fine cow," said the butcher, inspecting Klaus's animal. "I'll give you 4 gold coins for it." Klaus hesitated, but the butcher added, "And to sweeten the deal, I'll throw in a sausage as a bonus." The farmer's stomach growled at the sight of the plump sausage, and he eagerly agreed. "A good bargain at last," Klaus thought, tucking the golden sausage into his pouch. On his way home, Klaus passed a serene river where a group of ducks waddled along the shore. Feeling generous, he tossed the sausage to the ducks. "Enjoy a feast, my feathered friends," he said with a laugh. The ducks quacked happily, but Klaus soon regretted his generosity. "I could have enjoyed that sausage myself," he muttered. Still, he pressed on, determined to make his gold work for him. As Klaus approached his village, he encountered a group of soldiers from the king's army. They were practicing their drills in a field, their armor glinting in the sun. "Farmer!" one soldier called. "What brings you here?" Klaus told them about his trip to the market and his trade. The soldiers laughed heartily, amused by the tale of the sausage-eating ducks. "You're a generous man, Klaus," one soldier said. "But tell us, what would you do if someone insulted you?" Klaus puffed out his chest. "I demand justice, of course." The soldiers chuckled again. "Justice is a tricky thing, farmer. Let's hope you don't find yourself needing it." Klaus scratched his head, unsure of what they meant. The next day, Klaus's luck seemed to turn. As he walked through the village square, he heard a town crier announcing that the king would hold court to hear grievances. Klaus decided to attend. "If anyone owes me justice, it's those ducks," he thought. In the grand hall of the castle, Klaus presented his case before the king. "Your Majesty," he began, "yesterday I traded my finest cow for gold and a sausage. I gave the sausage to some ducks, and now I'm left with nothing to show for it." The court erupted in laughter. But the king raised a hand to silence them. "And what do you expect me to do, farmer?" Klaus hesitated. "Perhaps the ducks owe me something in return?" The king, amused by Klaus's sincerity, decided to humor him. "Very well, summon the ducks." Of course, the ducks could not be summoned to court, but the king turned the situation into a grand spectacle. He proclaimed that Klaus's case would be settled with a test of wits. "Klaus," said the king, "if you can answer 3 riddles, I will grant you a reward greater than your cow." Klaus's eyes lit up. "I'll do my best, Your Majesty," the king began. "What is lighter than air but can fill a room? What has no mouth but can speak to everyone? What has a beginning but no end?" Klaus thought hard. After much deliberation, he answered, "A smile, an echo, and a circle." The court erupted in applause, and the king, impressed, declared, "You are wiser than you appear, farmer. For your cleverness, I grant you a pouch of gold and a new cow." News of Klaus's clever answers spread through the kingdom. Though some laughed at his initial complaint about the ducks, others marveled at his wit. Back in his village, Klaus was greeted as a hero. His neighbors teased him less, and some even sought his advice on trades. But Klaus remained humble. "A good bargain isn't always about gold or cows," he said. "Sometimes it's about learning to laugh at yourself and finding joy in the unexpected." Months later, the king visited Klaus's village to see the clever farmer for himself. He brought with him a challenge. "Klaus, let us see if your good fortune holds. I offer you another riddle. If you answer correctly, you may join my court as an advisor." The king's riddle was a difficult one, but Klaus, using his sharp mind and newfound confidence, answered it with ease. The king laughed heartily and said, "Klaus, you have truly mastered the art of the good bargain. Come to the castle and share your wisdom with us all." Though Klaus never forgot his humble beginnings, his life changed forever. He became known as the farmer philosopher and used his position in the court to help others, teaching them the value of wit, kindness, and humility. As for the ducks, they continued to waddle along the river, blissfully unaware of the role they had played in Klaus's rise to fame. And so, Klaus the farmer, now Klaus the clever, lived happily, always finding joy in life's unexpected bargains. In a time when forests stretched endlessly and towns were few and far between, there lived a wandering musician named Elias. He was a strange figure, his hair unkempt, his coat patched, and his fiddle always at his side. Despite his ragged appearance, Elias possessed an extraordinary gift. His music could enchant anyone who listened. But Elias was lonely. He spent his days wandering through villages, playing his fiddle for a few coins or a meal. Though his music brought joy to others, it left him yearning for companionship. Perhaps, he thought, if I could find someone who truly understands my music, I wouldn't feel so alone. One crisp morning, Elias set out through a vast forest. The trees whispered secrets to the wind, and the birds sang songs of their own. Elias played his fiddle as he walked, hoping to summon a friend. For hours, there was no response. But as the sun began to dip below the horizon, he heard a rustling in the bushes. Out stepped a large, shaggy wolf with piercing yellow eyes. "Who dares disturb my forest?" growled the wolf. Elias, unfazed, began to play a soft, mournful tune. The wolf's ears twitched, and his fierce expression softened. "Your music is unlike any I've heard," said the wolf. "I will follow you, musician, and protect you in exchange for more of your songs." Elias smiled. "Then let us travel together." As the unlikely pair wandered further into the forest, they encountered a bear guarding a honey-filled tree. The bear growled, towering over Elias and the wolf. "No one may pass without besting me." Elias thought quickly and began to play a lively jig. The music was so infectious that the bear began to sway and dance, his massive paws thudding against the ground. When the song ended, the bear collapsed in a fit of laughter. "You've bested me fairly, musician," he said. "I will join you, for your music has awakened joy I'd forgotten." With a wolf and a bear at his side, Elias felt a glimmer of hope. "Perhaps I am no longer alone," he thought. Their journey brought them to a meadow where a sly fox was attempting to outwit a flock of geese. The fox noticed the trio and approached, his eyes glinting with curiosity. What brings such a peculiar group together?" asked the fox. "We are companions united by music," said Elias, lifting his fiddle. The fox smirked. "If your music can make me forget my hunger, I will join you." Elias played a haunting melody, evoking images of moonlit nights and forgotten dreams. The fox sat transfixed, his cunning smile replaced by a look of wonder. "You've succeeded, musician," said the fox. "I will follow you, for your music has touched even my cunning heart." With his growing band of companions, Elias reached an enchanted lake, shrouded in mist. A mysterious figure emerged from the water, a woman with hair like silver threads and eyes like the night sky. "I am Mira, guardian of this lake," she said. "Why have you come?" Elias bowed and said, "We seek only to rest. If you allow us, I will play a song in your honor." Mira nodded, and Elias began to play a melody that captured the beauty of the shimmering water and the ethereal light of the moon. When the song ended, Mira smiled. "Your music has cleansed my lake of sorrow. Take this token." She handed Elias a small crystal vial filled with glowing water. "It holds the power to heal wounds and mend broken hearts." Elias accepted the gift with gratitude, feeling a sense of purpose for the first time. The group continued their journey until they reached a desolate town. The streets were eerily quiet, and the windows of the houses were boarded up. An old man emerged from the shadows, his face lined with despair. "This town has been cursed by a sorcerer," he said. "No music, no laughter, and no light can survive here." Elias felt a pang of determination. "Perhaps my music can lift the curse." He began to play, but the air around him grew heavy. His fiddle strings snapped. The sorcerer appeared, his eyes blazing. "You dare defy me?" Elias stood firm. "I will not let this town remain in darkness." The sorcerer raised his staff, summoning shadows that lunged at Elias and his companions. The wolf snarled, the bear roared, and the fox darted forward. But the shadows were relentless. Elias remembered the vial of glowing water and uncorked it. As the light spilled out, he played a powerful tune that combined the courage of his companions, the wisdom of Mira, and the hope of the townsfolk. The light and music overwhelmed the sorcerer, shattering his staff and breaking the curse. The town erupted in cheers, and Elias's companions stood proudly by his side. The townsfolk celebrated Elias as a hero, and many offered him gold and gifts. But Elias declined. "I have found something far more valuable, friends and a purpose." With his companions, Elias set out once more, his heart full of music, his soul no longer lonely. Together, they brought light and joy to every corner of the land, proving that even the strangest musician could inspire hope and unity. If you like our stories, please like, subscribe, and turn on the little bell so you won't miss exciting stories every day. You are also welcome to share it with family and friends to listen to the story together. Love you.